In this video, I would explain how the demand curves shift versus when the demand curve does not shift. It's simply the quantity demanded is changing, but not the demand curve itself. I will try to clarify that in this tutorial. So before we start explaining demand change versus quantity demanded change, what is fundamentally different about that? Let's understand what the definition of demand. When we say demand, we are talking about a relationship between the price of commodity X versus the quantity of the same commodity X. Price of X versus quantity of X. So when we say demand, we're simply saying the relationship between price and quantity of that commodity. So in this particular example, let's say the commodity is beef, then we're saying, hey, what is the relationship between price of beef and the quantity of beef? And that is called the demand line for beef, just simply the relationship. So in this picture, this red line is the relationship between price of beef and quantity of beef. So I call it, this is a demand line for beef, and it simply tells us the relationship between price of beef. So let's going to call this, say, beef commodity curve we are talking about. So beef has a relationship between its own price and its quantity. At $10, people would demand a quantity A. If you look that up, that would probably something like 20 quantity. It could be 20 pounds or whatever. If you drop the price, there is a relationship, and it says when you drop the price to $5, the quantity demanded would increase to B. It may be something like 42 pounds or something like that. So the relationship would tell us how would the demanded amount would change, but the relationship is still the same. Price to quantity changes according to this line. So has the demand changed? Well, the question is, has the relationship between P of X versus Q of X, or price of beef versus quantity of beef, has it changed? We say no, the relationship is still the same. If somebody says, hey, we dropped the price from $10 to $5, has the demand changed? You say no, demand is defined as a relationship and it has not changed. It's just simply the quantity demanded on the same relationship, this red line, is we're looking at. So it's a quantity demanded change, but the demand or the relationship has not changed. Now let us talk about when will this relationship between price and quantity of beef would change. Well, if we consider a substitute called chicken, and the price of chicken, let's say, starts going up, chicken itself has its own relationship between its quantity chicken and price of chicken. That's a different demand curve for chicken. Our demand curve here is price of beef versus quantity of beef. That's this red line. But now if the substitute started increasing in its price, what would be the impact? Because substitute is a determinant. When a substitute price goes up, people would say, you know what, I'll go and buy more beef now that the chicken price is higher, right? So now let's go back to beef. The relationship used to be this. At $10, people were buying this many quantity of beef. Now people used to buy chicken because of the price. They jumped the wagon, and at $10 they're willing to buy two. So now I'm going to add some more people to this. So now the quantity is sitting here. So price of beef at $10 does not have the same relationship with quantity anymore. At $10 it used to be 20 quantity. Now at $10 the quantity has become something like 30. They're consuming more, so the relationship is changing. At $5 people used to buy 40. Now more people from chicken area came in to buy beef, so the quantity has increased here too. So now the beef relationship with its own price. So the price of beef versus the quantity of beef has a new relationship. And we're going to call that maybe D2 for beef, right? So because of the substitutes action elsewhere, the relationship between price of beef and quantity of beef has changed. So now we're not on the same relationship. So the question is, has the demand changed? In other words, has the relationship between price of beef and quantity of beef changed? And your answer is yes. The relationship is no longer red line. The relationship is the blue line. The demand has changed, right? The demand in this case has changed. But when you move from point A to point B, when you go from here, right, to this way, you're not changing. You're just simply on the same relationship. Quantity demanded in this particular case is increasing. This is Q demanded, right, is changing here. So that's the difference. If you're on the same line, it's just the quantity demanded changes, but the relationship is still the same. But blue line tells there is a new relationship for price of beef versus quantity of beef. That should clarify the demand change versus quantity demanded change.